So I want to be very clear that I am not buying anything that the Democratic Party is trying to sell. And that includes this tour that Bernie Sanders is now on to supposedly fight against the oligarchy, because I know that this is just another attempt to funnel people back into the Democratic Party, which is a corporate party, which also takes money from oligarchs. Now, I wasn't able to be present at the Worker Strike Back event in Seattle, but I was able to catch up on it. I really do wish I could have been there and been a part of it, but I couldn't because I had other things that were planned before that. So unfortunately, I couldn't participate in that, but I did want to make sure that I did cover it. I think that Do Dissidents and Jen Perlman and On Strike Back, and of course, my comrade from RBN, Nick, and Kit from Hardlands Media, everybody who appeared during that stream, I think they all did an amazing job. And they are highlighting something that I think we all need to fully pay attention to. So I do want to dive into Kshama and Jill and Chris's speech. I do want to highlight certain parts of it. We're not going to cover the entire speeches. I'm sure many of you have already seen that, but there's a couple of moments that I do want to pay close attention to. So let's go ahead and get started here with Kshama's speech. We're going to dive in here at this part about why we ended up with someone like Donald Trump. Let's go ahead and start here.
Some of the states that voted for Trump last year also passed ballot initiatives for a $15 minimum wage, paid sick leave, union support, and abortion rights. And a recent poll confirms that there is not majority support for the bulk of Trump's anti-worker agenda and the pet projects of the Republican Party.
So what this shows you right here, and this is something I've been screaming about too, and kudos to Kshama for highlighting ballot measures, because these ballot measures are showing you that when progressive, for the most part, these progressive policies are, up to the people, and the voters get to decide whether or not they want those progressive policies in their particular state. These policies are overwhelmingly passing for the most part, even in red states. Now, why do we bring this up? We bring this up because, for one, obviously the antics that you see from Donald Trump, whether it's laying off federal employees, et cetera, this is not a working class agenda. This is not helping out the workers, which is exactly what I warned people about. Now, I didn't vote for Trump or Kamala Harris. I voted for Jill Stein. I voted for a pro-worker, anti-genocide campaign that also had a Black agenda, because those are the policies that I believe in. Trump does not have a working class agenda right now. Obviously, you guys can see that. But I want to remind you the Democratic Party didn't either. Don't forget that it was under the Biden-Harris administration that they stopped the railroad workers from being able to participate in a strike. So you have two corporate parties, and we'll call it a uniparty, that is against the workers. And that is why I believe in this type of movement that Kshama and Jill and Chris are fighting for. We have to have a labor movement in this country that is outside of the two-party system. It cannot exist within the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, because both of those parties are owned by Wall Street. And in the end, they are going to do the bidding of Wall Street and their donors. This is especially important that when the people get to sit down and they have the option to choose to support a $15 minimum wage, or even some of the other progressive measures that have passed in red states, the people are overwhelmingly supporting those policies. So what that tells you is that when people are voting for the president, most of the time it feels like some of them are voting based on personality, or they're voting against the current party that is in office. And I think that's what happened this time around with the 2024 presidential election. I think a lot of people were voting against Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They were voting against the Democratic Party. And we are doing this back and forth, right? So the pendulum just continues to swing back and forth. In 2016, people were kind of voting against the antics of Hillary Clinton and maybe some of the decisions of the Democratic Party under Barack Obama. In 2020, it's not like all these people love Joe Biden. They were voting against Donald Trump and also his decisions during the pandemic. And now you fast forward to 2024 and you see the pendulum swings right back over in the other direction, because once again, people are voting against what the Democratic Party stood for. So it is pretty obvious to me that both parties are not working for the working class. Let's continue on here.
Majority opposed Trump's brutal attacks on federal employees. A majority of Americans are vehemently opposed to Trump's plan to permanently extend his 2017 tax cuts for the rich, tax cuts that Biden continued. Large majorities oppose eliminating the repayment plan that helps student loan borrowers and funding cuts for federal student loans and grants. Over 80% oppose cuts to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, commonly known as food stamps, and a whopping 90% of Americans are against cuts to Medicare and Medicaid.
And let's not forget that even under the Biden administration, Joe Biden made cuts to Medicaid and to SNAP benefits. I actually covered those stories when it happened, and a number of people tried to pretend like it wasn't happening because the Democratic Party was in charge. So once again, you have both parties that have made cuts to Medicaid and have made cuts to SNAP benefits. Never forget that, ladies and gentlemen.
Trump's own approval ratings, while higher in the past, are basically breaking even. About an equal number approve and disapprove. And this is during his so-called honeymoon period. These approval ratings have nowhere to go but down. But we should not expect that it will happen overnight. We should not be complacent. And in the meantime, Trump and the billionaires are going for broke. They want to do maximum damage at this moment before a serious opposition to their assault develops and before the real impacts of the damage they're doing becomes clear. The main success of this billionaire in the White House has been tapping into the widespread anger at the establishment, and in this, he's been handed a humongous gift by the rotten Democratic Party and its endless betrayals of working people, which allowed him to get re-elected after he left office as the most unpopular president in modern American history. The huge irony is that Trump is the one capitalizing on working class anger, and the anger that is actually at billionaires and the rich, and the very same class that Trump himself belongs to and represents. Politicians and the corporate media were stunned by the show of support on social media for Luigi Mangione, the man accused of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson last year. They were even more shocked when polling showed that this was not some fringe phenomenon, but a strong majority sentiment, nearly 70%.
Yep. So what you are seeing once again is people pushing back against corporations, the elite, the establishment.
This anger represents a historic opening to fight for fundamental change if it can be redirected into a working class movement. Killing individual CEOs is no solution. Thompson has already been replaced with another blood-sucking executive. Yep. And if such killings were to continue, they would be used as a pretext to attack workers and increase the powers of the police. Instead, we need to build powerful mass movements of the millions against the billionaires. And it's only through working class power that we can win a different kind of society. Our goal must be to both fight for radical change in the present and to bring down the billionaires and their system, capitalism.
Yeah, and you can see more of what Kshama said there, but one of the parts there that I really wanted to highlight that I thought was especially important was this part here where she basically just showed you how both of these parties have led to this moment, right? Both of these parties have led to this moment. Let's continue a little bit more, and then I want to go to Chris Hedges.
Unfortunately, alongside the fury of working people, the most prominent feature of this political moment is the near total vacuum of clear leadership on the left and in the labor movement. There is a profound shortage of leaders prepared to break with the political parties of the rich. We've seen betrayals one after another of these so-called progressives: Bernie Sanders, AOC and the Squad, and progressive labor leaders like Sean Fain. Both Bernie and AOC played a central role in bringing Trump to power. They uncritically supported Biden and then rushed to endorse Harris.
Pause. This is probably one of the most important things I think that Kshama Sawant says during this speech is that Bernie Sanders, the actions of Bernie Sanders and AOC, once again, they gave us Donald Trump again. Because as these so-called progressives, they were supposed to hold Biden and Kamala, the establishment corporate Democrats, accountable, and they didn't do that. Remember, AOC and Bernie, before Kamala was the candidate, were endorsing and supporting Joe Biden, knowing damn well that Joe Biden was not fit to lead another presidential term, knowing that Joe Biden had fought against the workers, the railroad workers, knowing that Joe Biden was aiding and abetting a genocide that he could have just stopped just like that by making a phone call the same way that Ronald Reagan did. So when it really mattered, Bernie and AOC were not willing to stand up to that same corporate warmongering establishment within the Democratic Party, because that's the party that they either caucus with or they are a part of. Now that Donald Trump is in power again, all of a sudden people want to fight. And you notice this trend. You have to remember where Justice Democrats came from. So don't forget that Justice Democrats was formed after President Trump won in 2016. It wasn't formed before that. It was formed after that as a response to Donald Trump's win. Now, they were supposed to go into the Democratic Party and they were supposed to have a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party. Obviously, that did not happen. And all this time that they have been there, they have not pushed back against the establishment forces or Dem leadership within that party. This cannot be said enough. These people right now, they are part of the reason why Donald Trump was able to win again, because they did not hold the Democratic Party accountable. These people can walk away from Congress tomorrow and lead a whole new movement, and their followers would join them because they have so many people that are still following them and that still support the efforts that they're trying to do. But they're not there to be disruptors. And you have to really grasp this. They are not there to disrupt. They are there to go along, but to make you believe that they are fighting for you when they're not. It is an illusion. And when the people who are brought in that are supposed to push back against the forces that are oppressing you, the forces that are pushing down against the working class people, when those people don't push back against those forces, and that was their assignment, they're tasked to do so, they open the door for the pendulum to swing in the other direction towards a Donald Trump. That's how you get Trump again. So Kshama is 100% spot on right here.
They abandoned Medicare for all. They abandoned the fight for a $15 minimum wage. They could have organized mass rallies on either of those demands and put massive pressure on both parties and built a new party in the process.
Yep.
Instead, they put a premium on their peaceful relations with the elite, squandered a historic opportunity, and carried out a historic betrayal. There is a meme going around of Bernie Sanders' action figure that has a stamp on it saying sold out. I'm not sure if there's one for AOC. In any case, that meme is the epitaph of the Bernie movement.
100%. So that's some of what Kshama had to say there. And then I want to go to the part here from Chris Hedges. I want to play a little bit of his speech here as well. Again, Chris Hedges is a powerful speaker.
The utopian ideology of neoliberalism and global capitalism is a vast con, a mechanism to funnel wealth upwards to the billionaire class. The working poor, whose unions and rights were stripped from them and whose wages have stagnated or declined over the past 40 years, have been disempowered and impoverished. Their lives, as Barbara Ehrenreich chronicled in Nickel and Dimed, are one long, stress-ridden emergency. The middle class is evaporating. Cities that once manufactured products and offered factory jobs are boarded up wastelands. The destruction is a ruse. Corporations, the destruction of trade barriers is a ruse corporations and the billionaire class used to stash $1.42 trillion in profits in overseas banks to avoid paying taxes. The labels liberal and conservative are meaningless, evidenced by a Democratic presidential candidate who turned to Wall Street bankers to formulate her economic policies and bragged about an endorsement from Dick Cheney, a war criminal who left office with a 13% approval rating.
And the sad part about this is that there were many people that consider themselves to be progressives who went right along with this. All of a sudden, billionaire money didn't matter. All of a sudden, endorsement from Dick Cheney doesn't matter. All of a sudden, genocide doesn't matter. Just went along with the status quo. And this is what I said before. It's more about being pro-Democratic Party, right? So it's all about, do you support the party? It's not really about, do you support the policies that are going to benefit and help the people? Even Bernie Sanders showed this to you himself. After 2016, make sure you support Hillary Clinton. It's all about, do you support the party? If the party is committing the same evils that you say the Republican Party is also committing, are you really doing yourself anything better? Are you doing better for working class people? Because I think this is what we've seen, right? Why do we have an increase of homelessness in this country? Why are so many people out of work? And yes, part of this has to do with Donald Trump's policies with laying off federal workers. But even before Donald Trump took office, we had a problem with the layoffs. I've been talking about this for years. And yet people told you the economy was just fine. Why are kids struggling to be able to eat 3 meals a day? Why is it that in this country, which is incredibly wealthy, why are there some kids who only get to have a meal when they go to school, when they have free breakfast and free lunch? Why? It has become more about the uber rich, the Wall Street class, and less about the working class people.
Fascism is always the bastard child of a bankrupt liberalism. The attraction of Trump is that, although vile and buffoonish, he mocks the political charade. Trump lies like he breathes, but the lies told by the two establishment parties caused far more pain and did far more damage than the lies told by Trump. Trump is merely the apotheosis of a culture of mendacity, deception, and exploitation, for we are a culture awash in lies. It no longer matters what is true, it matters only what is correct. The correct ideology of neoliberalism is as delusional as the correct ideology of the Christian fascists. Neither are reality-based belief systems. Totalitarianism elevates the brutal and the stupid, those with no genuine political philosophy other than a lust for wealth and power. Empty, mind-numbing cliches and slogans, most of which are absurd and contradictory, replace political discourse. And this is as true for the Christian right as it is for those who preach free market economics and globalization. The illusions peddled on our screens, including the fictitious persona created for Trump on The Apprentice, have replaced reality. Politics is burlesque, as Kamala Harris's vapid, celebrity-filled, issueless campaign illustrated. It is smoke and mirrors created by an army of agents, publicists, marketing departments, promoters, pollsters, script writers, wardrobe consultants, and public announcers. Our money-drenched, heavily managed elections are little more than totalitarian plebiscites designed to give a veneer of legitimacy to oligarchic and corporate power. The political malaise is mirrored in a cultural malaise, what Soren Kierkegaard calls a sickness unto death, the numbing of the soul by nihilism. The cult of the self dominates our cultural landscape. I wrote an Empire of Illusion. This cult has within it the classic traits of psychopaths: superficial charm, grandiosity, and self-importance, a need for constant stimulation, a penchant for lying, deception, and manipulation, and the inability to feel remorse or guilt. This is, of course, the ethic promoted by corporations. It is the ethic of unfettered capitalism. It is the misguided belief that personal style and personal advancement, mistaken for individualism, are the same as democratic equality. In fact, personal style, defined by the commodities we buy or consume, has become a compensation for our loss of democratic equality. We have a right in the cult of the self to get whatever we desire. We can do anything, even belittle and destroy those around us, including our friends, to make money, to be happy, to become famous. Once fame and wealth are achieved, they become their own justification, their own morality. How one gets there is irrelevant. Once you get there, those questions are no longer asked. My book, Empire of Illusion, begins in Madison Square Garden at a World Wrestling Entertainment Tour. I understood that professional wrestling was the template for our social and political life, but I did not know that it would produce a president, and soon a secretary of education, who has vowed to shut the department down. The bouts are stylized rituals I wrote in what could have been a description of a Trump rally. They are public expressions of pain and a fervent longing for revenge, the lurid and detailed sagas behind each bout, rather than the wrestling matches themselves, are what drive crowds to a frenzy. These ritualized battles give those packed in the arenas a temporary, heady release from mundane lives. The burden of real problems is transformed into fodder for a high-energy pantomime. It is not going to get better. The tools to shut down dissent have been cemented into place. Our democracy cratered years ago.
This is something I think that Chris Hedges does very well that some people just don't want to do because they're like, oh, that's just gloom and doom. But he's being honest. If we continue on the path that we have, no, it's not going to get better. Things have continued to get worse, especially when we talk about inequality in this country, economic inequality that hasn't improved. That's only getting worse. So that's the part about Chris Hedges that I appreciate, is that he's not there to make you feel better. He's there to lay out the facts, which may make some people uncomfortable, but we cannot continue this path that we are on, or things will not improve.
All Trump has to do to establish a naked police state is flip a switch, and he will. The worse reality becomes, the less a beleaguered population wants to hear about it. I wrote at the conclusion of Empire of Illusion, and the more it distracts itself with squalid pseudo-events of celebrity breakdowns, gossip, and trivia. These are the debauched revels of a dying civilization. The system is not reformable. Either we obstruct in the only form left to us, which is mass mobilization, acts of sustained civil disobedience, especially the strike, or we are frog-marched into serfdom.
That part right there. And again, you can watch the full speech on Strike channel here. But I wanted to play at least to that part to get you to hear what he said about the system is not reformable. Again, I'm still on this I'm not, buying it kick. You can see that on the board behind me. I'm not buying it that the Democratic Party can be reformed. I've heard about this for years. People claim they were fighting for this for years. I'm not buying that. And I've said because of multiple reasons, the big one being that corporate money controls the party. So as long as Wall Street controls the Democratic Party, you're not going to be able to reform it. We've seen AIPAC come in and just kick people out of their seats. Again, that's big money lobby interest that is coming in. And the reality is Dem leadership is totally fine with that. Hakeem Jeffries is walking around telling people, what do you expect us to do? And that right there should reveal a lot to people. They were never sent there to actually do anything. They're there to go along with the status quo, but to convince you that they're doing something and that they're fighting. And I think we all know what fighting actually looks like, excuse me. That is very well said there by Chris Hedges, that the system, that it cannot be reformed. People have to understand that. We move on to this part here of Jill Stein, which apparently Jill Stein was just coming off of illness here. And she still made it. I think she had the flu, if I remember correctly, and she still was there. So for all the liberals and all the K-hive, like ridiculous nuts that you see online saying, where's Jill Stein? This is where Jill Stein is, back organizing, which is what she does. She's an organizer. She's an activist. Kamala Harris, meanwhile, is up there accepting an image award for what? Right? So this is where Jill Stein is. This is what Jill Stein has been doing. And those people know that. You have to understand those people are trolls. Listen to this part.
I come here a little bit under the weather, as some of you may know, having had a bad case of the flu a couple weeks ago and then some asthma triggered by that flu. And I almost didn't come, feeling like there was no way I could actually prepare for this amazing summit. But at the end, I decided I needed to come just to be here, just to bear witness, just because this is what democracy looks like, and this is how we fight back. And if we come away from today with nothing more than the commitment to stay together, to be together, to know that what we did in the last election was not just okay, it was absolutely essential. It was world-saving. It is the way forward. This is what we must do. And the fact that they continue to blame us and to try to, to smear us for having challenged empire and oligarchy and genocide, the fact that they will not let up is absolutely the affirmation of our lasting impact and the fact that we must keep up this fight.
That's right. They are still criticizing Jill Stein even now, right? They're still, even though the numbers show that even if you added up all the third party votes together, Kamala Harris still loses the election. So they want to point fingers everywhere, except for, of course, at the party.
In our minds, it's really important to invert the smears when they come at you. It should be an affirmation. It should be seen as a badge of honor. It should be seen as a confirmation that what we do absolutely matters. So I say, bring it on. Keep those smears coming. Keep us relevant. So we are very much here, and I want to thank everyone here virtually and in the room who's here to take back power from the billionaires and their two parties that serve them, and to put power into the hands of working people. So we continue the momentum of our pro-worker, anti-war, anti-genocide, climate emergency to demand an America and a world that works for working people, which is the only world that works for all of us. And it's important to know that that world in many ways is closer than it has ever been, because empire and oligarchy are indeed unraveling right now before our very eyes. They are collapsing in front of us. Empire is falling, we are rising, and this is unstoppable. So it's really critical, above all, to reject the propaganda that tells us that we are powerless, that resistance is futile. So many of us right now, a recent poll, even before the shit started hitting the fan, something like 72% of Americans were tuning out of politics in the wake of the last election, the 24 election. 72%, according to polls, are tuning out because politics has become so toxic, so distasteful. And that is true, but it cannot stop there. We have to seize the moment. This is that perfect storm for speaking to the vast majority of Americans right now who are in revolt. They've just been denied a framework in which to unite that revolt. And that is what we are doing here today and with this workers' strike back movement. So I encourage everyone to become a part of it if you are not already.
That part right there that Jill said is incredibly important, because there are a number of people that just feel like, oh my God, like we had the Democrats and it was horrible. And we got Trump again and now it's horrible again. And they just feel completely lost and they don't know where to turn to. There are a number of people that have either left the Democratic Party or left the Republican Party. I would say more have left the Democratic Party based on the numbers that I've seen. And they just don't know where they fit. They say, I have no political home. I don't know what to do. I just don't know. And this is where I would say channel that energy into organizing, channel that energy into this type of movement that Jill and Kshama and Chris are building here through Workers' Strike Back, a labor movement, a real labor movement that does not include union leadership that sell out to either party. And that is especially clear. And I've told you guys before, I do not agree with union leaders endorsing these political parties. I think that should be a separate thing. They should focus on the workers. But this is where you would go. So a lot of people are asking, what are the solutions? What do we do? I do mutual aid. I'm going to start mutual aid workshops to teach you guys how to do that as well. That should start actually later on this week. And then on top of that, aside from mutual aid, there is the labor movement. There is organizing, and Workers' Strike Back. I highly recommend check them out. We've had them on the show multiple times before to talk about the org, but their org is focused on labor and helping people, helping workers fight back against these greedy CEOs and these Wall Street vultures. And that's really what we need in this country, because I hope after this election, people are able to see that both parties sell out the workers. Both parties support the oligarchy, despite what Bernie Sanders would have you believe at this moment on this tour of his. Both parties answer to Wall Street, answer to the military industrial complex, and the American working class people are left behind. So you have to ask yourself, how long do you want that to continue? And I've said this before, it's only a matter of time. More people aren't coming out to vote. The 2024 election is a clear indication of that, where more people stayed home. So this is the type of thing I say, put your energy into something like this. We'll go on a little bit more here, and then there's another part of the speech I want to show you.
Their resistance, their continuing smears against us, tells us that they, in fact, are terrified. They are terrified because they know that their days are numbered and they know that we are getting together. That is why they pulled out all the stops during our campaign. Their army of lawyers, their infiltrators and spies, which they publicly advertised for, their delay in our public funding, which kept us off the ballot in several states because we were not able to pay the costs of getting on the ballot where those deadlines were missed. The fact that they created a war room of constant lies and smears to disparage and suppress our campaign. That war room cost more than the entire cost of our whole campaign. So that tells you, what the terms were. They were terrified. Over 1/3 of eligible voters are not voting because they reject these toxic candidates and political parties being rammed down our throats. And who are those 1 out of every 3, more than 1 out of every 3 eligible voters who don't vote? They are largely people of color, low income, and youth. Exactly the people who benefit from the agenda that we propose. So this is a meltdown of empire, a meltdown of duopoly, and it is on the verge of that transformation to a people-powered politics. This is the American public where, excuse me, where 68% of Americans, last they asked, wanted an immediate ceasefire and an end to the genocide, where over 60% want a shutdown of all military aid to Israel.
And then I want to fast forward to this part here for the sake of time, because it picks up on that part there where she left off. This part here is incredibly important. I want you guys to hear this part here about the Israel part and about what needs to happen to those who are in office. Listen.
Police are vicious. I mean, there are many people who've encountered police for a long time who know how vicious this is. So you do have to use some discretion about when you stand up and where you stand up, but we have to stand up. And one of the most important ways to stand up is by striking, is by withdrawing our labor, by supporting labor unions to do the same. And I want to also put in a plug for BDS, for Boycott, Divestment, and Sanction, and Alameda County right now is among many counties who have withdrawn their retirement funds. Alameda County just pulled out $32 million from Caterpillar and its horrific destructive equipment. It is only a matter of time. Israel and its genocidal war and its genocidal economy is on its last legs. People are leaving. Its economy is in tatters. It cannot carry out even a war against Hamas. Hamas has reconstituted. Volunteers have replaced those who were killed, but the Israelis are struggling. They are capable of a 7-day war. They are not capable of a 7-month war, not even against one country. Now they are quickly expanding this concept of the greater Israel into Lebanon, into Syria, who knows, perhaps into Egypt as well. But there are conflicts now that are active and others that are brewing. Israel cannot possibly sustain this without our tax dollars and ultimately our blood. Israel is going to need boots on the ground under Democrats. We reactivated the draft. Our names, the names and addresses and emails of our young people are all in the hands of the security state right now.
Yep.
Let them try to reactivate the draft, and that will certainly be the match that kindles an incredible opposition, because the opposition is already there. Israel cannot conduct genocide without us, and we do not consent, and the traction for that is with our elected leadership. We need to throw these bums out. We need to organize. We need to prepare for the general strike, and we need to run them out of office. Thank you all so very much. I look forward to working together. Our work has only just begun. Thank you.
And that part right there is the part that I really want to send home. Jill Stein hit the nail on the head. We need to throw these bums out. No more begging these politicians to help you or try to reform the Democratic Party. They have to go. All of these people, all of them, they need to be replaced. They're all corrupt because they belong to a corrupt system. They have to go. And I think that ultimately is the message that you need to send home. I would love to see these Congress members replaced with independent candidates and third party candidates, people who are not beholden to the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. That's what I would love to see happen. And things really do need to change. And in the meantime, this movement, a labor movement, is exactly what we need. And we called it years ago. We need a general strike. You have to shut down the oligarchy. And you're not going to shut them down, Bernie Sanders. You are not going to shut down the oligarchy by asking people to donate money to you once again, as he is, going to swing districts and convincing those people to support a different type of oligarchy in the Democratic Party. That is not how you are going to shut them down. So again, kudos there to Kshama Sawant, Jill Stein, and of course, Chris Hedges. This is the direction that people need to move in. I encourage you to follow Workers Strike Back, follow them online, follow them on Twitter, look at their website. You can join Workers Strike Back. They are doing a great job. And this is really the direction that we need to go in. Many people are not going to say it to you. They're not going to tell you because their audience depends on them supporting one of those two parties. You have to get that part. You have to understand that many of them know that this is the right thing to do, but the longer you are in this space, the things that you start to see. And some of the things that I've started to see is a lot of these people don't believe half the shit that they're saying. They say it because that's the audience that they have captured, and they'll do anything to maintain that audience, even if it means leading you in the wrong direction while they continue to get richer. General strike, labor movement, great conference. I think they did a tremendous job, and kudos to everyone that was involved. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.